People come from all walks of life. They all have lives they lead. Any and all are welcome here to come and chat with me.
Hi, everyone. Well, when I look out my kitchen window, I can see the top half of a church. And that's one of the things that we're going to talk about today. Not everything, that's one of them. With my guest, ladies and gentlemen, Debora Lynn Soutar. Welcome to the show.
Well, thank you, Nancy. Glad to see everybody.
Did I pronounce your last name right?
Yes.
Okay, good. I often get things wrong, so names wrong, so I have to check. So now I was reading your bio and that you're originally from Ontario, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And moved to Chilliwack, you were pretty young at the time?
I was 10 when we moved to Cultus Lake.
Oh, to Cultus Lake, right? Okay. And now you got involved with natural history really early.
I think being at Cultus Lake as a young girl made a very strong impression. Even in Ontario, I liked going to the provincial parks and walking and looking at birds. But when we came to BC and saw those mountains and those big trees, I just fell in love.
Nice. Now, where did that interest take you?
I started watching the Junior Forest Rangers on TV. And if you're my age, then you'll remember that great show set in Northern Ontario, these young kids that had adventures in the great outdoors. And exploring in the Swelter Creek and the woods around Cultus Lake. Then I wanted to make a career in the outdoors. And at that time, there weren't very many choices. You could take forestry or you could take fish and wildlife. And I needed to get a job, and the fish and wildlife track didn't really provide promising employment. So forestry it was.
That's interesting that you went into forestry. Well, it's not surprising considering your interest, right?
It was a natural fit at the time. Sometimes I wish I was starting now because there are so many more choices for outdoor education.
Right. Now, how long were you with the forestry?
I worked for the Forest Service in Rosedale for 5 years. So I worked in the bush at that time. But forestry is a very volatile industry in British Columbia. And sometimes there's lots of work and sometimes not so much. So in between working in the industry, I worked for BC Parks doing environmental education, or I'd work for a survey company, or I would do mapping, or I would do consulting. So I always had a job and I was always doing something interesting, but I wouldn't call it like an upwardly mobile career where, next thing you know, you're the Minister of Forests or something.
Yeah. Now you talked about, that was one of the things you talked about, the slump in the 1980s, right?
Yes.
In Ohio, and that really affected a lot of people. So how did that affect you personally?
I believe that my class, 1981, was the first forestry class to not get employment.
Right.
All of us ended up doing different things. I was so fortunate that locally here in Chilliwack, one of the legal surveyors was a teacher at BCIT, and he knew that the forestry education and the surveying education had a lot of similarities. And so he took a chance and hired me as a survey assistant. So again, the education provided excellent job opportunities, lots of transferable skills.
Right.
It wasn't exactly forestry, but it was outside.
Yeah. Now, speaking of that, now you got involved with the Blue Heron Reserve.
Oh yes. So this career that's going up and down and up and down, lots of teaching nature to kids, lots of that. And somehow the word got out that I was providing outdoor education in local parks. And the Rotary Club approached me and asked if I'd be willing to help with the Great Blue Heron Nature Reserve. It hadn't opened yet. It was a brand new thing.
Okay.
It was very interesting. And I ended up being on the management team. And then I was hired as the first staff person to coordinate volunteers and develop programs and whatnot.
Are you still doing that?
I went from there to managing an environmental consulting company, so that my career went whoop up again. And but I stayed in touch with Heron Reserve, and I'm a lifetime member, and I volunteer regularly. I do nature walks seasonally throughout the year, New Year's Day walk, twilight walk in August, that kind of thing.
Right. Now, talking about you said that you had a career. Oh, wait a minute. Sorry. I was going to ask something about the silviculture forest.
Oh, silviculture. So that's the part of forestry that I really enjoyed. I'm not that interested in logging. I don't really like heavy machinery,
Right.
but silviculture is the planting and the nurturing of the trees. So I got quite involved in that area where you survey the forest even before it's harvested and make the plans for the future. What kind of baby trees are we going to put in there? So we have to order the seedlings. We have to order the correct number of seedlings, the right species, etc. Then I went to hiring the tree planters when the time came, and I would do the contract administration, be out in the field with them, checking their work for payment. And then the follow-ups would include juvenile spacing and pruning and general monitoring of the young crop beef until it's, as we said, free to grow, which means it's pretty much grown up, and we'll just let it grow now until it's ready to be harvested.
Okay, right. I was just thinking about, with all the forest fires that have been happening, just not only here, but everywhere, like people like you, I mean, it bothers all of us, but of course, people like you who have such a strong interest in the nature, it must really hit hard.
The wildfires are affecting everybody dramatically, and more so in the last few seasons than in any time that I recall. Historically on the coast, wildfires only occurred every 100 years or so, and they were conflagrations. They were huge fires, but they didn't happen very often on the coast. And of course, now we're seeing that's completely different. Now they're happening all the time. So if you're in the forestry business, yes, you have a lot of concerns because you're wondering, well, what can we do better?
Right.
How can we prevent wildfires, or how can we manage fires to make things safer for people and better for the forest? And everyone else is very anxious because of their health and the air quality. And in British Columbia, we recognize that wood is a very important resource and we need it. We all care about wildlife, and more we're learning more about old growth and realizing that's something that's really important to us also. So from a forestry perspective, it's an academic anxiety. What are we doing wrong, or what can we do better?
Right, yeah, for sure. And now let's talk about one of the reasons why I had asked you on the show is about what's happening with this particular church. First of all, tell us about the church.
Originally, Chilliwack United Church was one of the very first churches in our town at Five Corners. It relocated to Spadina, I hope I have the history correct. And that little church was relocated farther down Yale, and it's the goldsmith shop now. It's a heritage building. The congregation built a new church in 1953, and that's the one that's bounded by Yale, Spadina, and Main Streets right now. And it used to be a huge congregation, maybe 600 Sunday school kids. A lot of people went there regularly. But like many other churches, now we find that the congregation is dwindled, and we have this beautiful big old building that we can't take care of anymore. I've been involved in our church for a long time, singing in the choir, that kind of thing.
Oh yes.
It's a wonderful community. I have some great friends there. So I got involved at the administrative end over time. And while I was chairing the church council, I recognized that we had this dilemma, and it didn't look like it was going to solve itself. How can we take care of this building? We don't have the resources. I asked our treasurer to do some projections, and the results were grim. We just couldn't maintain this building for very much longer. And at that time, I reached out to our congregation for ideas. I said, what are we going to do? Are we going to just fade to black? Are we going to try and do something meaningful with this property? What are we going to do? And I was so proud of our congregation, because I'm no spring chicken, but I'm one of the young ones. So just to get an idea of our demographic, these people who have been devoted to this church for so long voted to explore the possibilities of redevelopment. It's taken several years, and timing is everything.
Mhm.
With BC Housing's commitment to provide, I believe it's 10,000 homes in 10 years, the timing was right for us.
Okay.
We wanted to help homeless people or help poor people or provide housing or something. And what we've settled on is preventing homelessness by providing affordable housing in an awesome location, downtown Chilliwack.
Yeah. So like, in what sense, what are you going to do? What's the ultimate plan?
The ultimate plan, we've got preliminary funding approval from BC Housing to build a 6-story, approximately 75 unit apartment building on the site. So right now where there's a beautiful sanctuary, that mock Tudor style with the rock foundation.
Mhm.
There's a very old community hall adjacent, and there's some ancillary office buildings that are not particularly appealing buildings. So the entire property will be redeveloped for 6 stories housing.
I'm just trying to think, how much higher is that going to take? Because when I look out here, I can actually see the church now.
Yes.
I'm
It'll
not
be taller. It'll be taller than that. We'll be able to see it from a goodly distance away. I've been testing all summer when I drive around. I go, where will I see it? How tall will it be? So
Yeah.
I've identified some other 6-story buildings in the neighborhood.
Mhm.
Pictured. Oh yeah. Okay. That's it. It'll be an imposing structure. It will catch the eye.
Right. I'm just thinking about, I'm glad it's in that same spot. Otherwise, because I can also see a bit of the library and because I'm on Spadina, I can see the library and parts of the hotel, so I'm glad that won't change, because of where the church is. If you're using that exact same spot, nothing changes for my view, except that I get to see an apartment building. So I'm glad in that way, that nothing will change. So, because that would bother, I think, a lot of people when they see, something that was this high suddenly become this high.
Oh, right. Yeah. No, it's not going to be like in Vancouver where there's just a monolith. It won't be like that.
Yeah, for sure. So when do you think that's going to happen?
There are lots of steps to go through. Right now, we're getting design approval from BC Housing, and then there are approvals throughout the process. But our goal is to be breaking ground at the end of 2022.
Okay.
So in a year and a bit, we hope that all of the approvals are in place, zoning, BC Housing funding, all the legal documents, all taken care of, so that the soil could be broken at the end of December. And I think it's about a year of construction. So as early possibly as December 2023, but given I'm doing a renovation on a house right now, everything takes longer than you think.
I think that's the same thing for everybody. Do you know the part about how somebody would qualify for that, to be in a place like that?
I don't know the exact details. We have partnered with a development company,
Mhm.
and they have developed other properties for similar purposes in Abbotsford, Hope, Mission, and in Chilliwack. An example in Chilliwack is the Waterstone behind Canton Gardens.
Right.
They built that and they manage it. we interviewed a few companies to find that perfect partnership. It's Mamalaut Quisam Housing Society, and they're an Indigenous housing society, but this project is not, it is a community funding project. So it's not exclusively an Indigenous funded project.
Right.
And they have to have a business plan that will ensure the sustainability of the building. They have to bring in enough rent to pay for the mortgage to take care of the building. So some of the units, a certain percentage, will be full market value. And then another percentage will be partially subsidized so that the rent is quite reduced, but affordable for you. And then there's another percentage which would be fully subsidized, and those people would never pay more than 30% of their income. So if you only had $100 coming in a month, you'd pay $33 for your rent. That's a flippant example, but it's true. And then if your income increased, then you would pay more.
Right.
So that percentage might move around a little bit so that the project is sustainable. You might need more market housing sometimes. Right. They're very strict about who can come in. So there will be that needs assessment. You have to give evidence that you need affordable housing. And then you would have to have a decent track record, I would imagine. Because they want the building to be safe and secure, right, and comfortable. And we're looking for a neighborhood feeling. So there will be seniors and families. It's not just one user group. Right. It'll be its own little community in a way.
Right. I think that's awesome, actually, because I was just talking to somebody, I can't remember who I was interviewing, and we were just talking about affording rent, like even basement suites. The rents have gone so ridiculously high, in my opinion anyway, and a lot of the people's opinion. So we need more and more. Obviously, we need more and more affordable housing, right? Otherwise the government, I guess the only option would be for the government to step in and put a cap on rent.
And that's very simplistic answer, because we can, as soon as you start talking about it, you realize, oh, there are a lot of complications with something like that.
Right.
So we just strictly looked at recognizing it's really hard for lots of people to be able to afford a safe home that's close to their school, close to downtown, where they won't need a car, for example, because they can get around from that address. Without that support, without that help, they might end up being one of the many people who don't have a home. And that's a whole separate problem. And we'd love to be able to address it, but we don't have the capacity for that. So we just chose the part that maybe we can make a difference.
Okay, now if somebody wanted to find out more about that particular project, should they contact you, or is there an association that they can contact?
They can contact me directly. And if I don't have the answer, which is entirely possible, I can forward their questions and concerns to our architect or to the developer, or BC Housing, different websites like that. We've got preliminary drawings. We've got a lot of information that we could share if somebody was interested.
Right. So could they contact you on Facebook? Is that a good?
That's a good way. That's how you found me, I think, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Yes.
I don't know how that happened, but it just happened. But I can't even remember now, because I think I can't remember when it was that I contacted you. Doing the show, as you can understand, I kind of lose track of those things. Now I'm going to totally change the subject.
Okay.
And I want to talk about, at one point you ran for council, right?
Yes. At the last municipal election, which was 3 years ago.
So why did you do that? What was your interest in being on council?
I care so much about our community. I think we all do. And personally, I feel that we each have a responsibility to do the best we can with the tools or skills that we have. And I've reached a point in my life where my skills and tools are administrative. I've chaired a lot of meetings. I've organized a lot of events. I have participated in a lot of different organizations in our community. And I feel that I have the the skills, the contacts, and the passion to do a good job on council.
That's really good. Yeah. Would you run again?
Yes, in my opinion, I've just been continuing the campaign for the past 3 years.
Good for you. Good for you. Now you have some leisure time. I don't know when. I mean, when I think about people who do as much as you do, but you do like enjoy things like, well, hiking. I understand. I totally understand that one, right? And I also understand the gardening, kayaking.
I live right beside the slough. So
Oh,
I just
wow.
pop my kayak into the water and off I go. It's kind of like going for a walk in your backyard. This past spring, a group of us organized a paddling challenge, and people came from all over the Fraser Valley to explore our different waterways. Many people know about the section of paddling route between the Scout Hall on Hope River.
Yes.
And the Young Street Bridge. So you often see people there. This year we saw a lot of people there, and it was getting kind of crowded. And with COVID, we're all kind of sensitive to crowds.
Yes.
So we saw there was this opportunity to spread out. Well, let's share all the other waterways that are easy to access, have something really interesting to offer. And it worked. There were people paddling all over the place.
That sounds like fun. Well, I guess we're out of time. But this has been really good. I just stay on camera to say goodbye to the audience. Yes, I hope you've enjoyed hearing what Debora Soutar has to say. And if you want to get more information about the church and the affordable housing that's going to be happening, by figuring it'll be ready by 2022, if that's possible. But anyway, you can contact her on Facebook. In the meantime, thank you for watching the show, and yeah, hope to see you again. Until then, everybody, peace out.
A sense of community, Chilliwack's a place to be. A sense of community when you're free. Rolling through the mountains, rolling through the valley, rolling through paradise with me. It's multicultural, you're sure to see it all. Chilliwack's the place to be, you'll see. Come party in the park, go dancing after dark. Chilliwack's the place to be, you'll see.